Bill Davis, Ancestry Lands, ancestrylands.com. I want to talk to everyone. If you're doing something, I want you to really take a moment to listen because I'm a father now. I've been a father actually for about 8 years, got three children. And I want to ask everyone the question is that, do we honor our parents anymore? You see in the news today um, Master P, Romeo debacle, if you will. And, the son took to social media to air out his grievances with his father, over social media. And, I when I'm asking, do we honor our fathers? I'm also going to ask, is social media the place where you do that? Is that the place you make a statement to denigrate or try to prove a point or bring down and tear down a person? I don't know how Master P or Mr. Miller has raised his son, and I know his son's been in the spotlight, and like all children, they'll have their grievances with how their parents raised them, things they could have done better in the children's eyes, things, wrongs that they've done. And while those things are valid, I don't want to ever say that, his version or his issues with the way his father raised him and his siblings or something that we should look at and say, well, he doesn't have a right to say. He has every right to say. My question is social media the place where you do those things? And the reason why I ask that is that what's the outcome? What do you gain by tearing someone down on social media, especially your father of all people? It's no doubt that we've seen, Romeo throughout his career grow up from a small boy to a now grown man. And, we've seen his father, where his upbringing is, where he came from, to becoming a person who now has, the snack pack. And within the community, are we still, and I'm sure this is going to be, you've seen this with famous celebrities. This is not just something that happens within, African American culture. This is starting to happen, in a lot of different cultures. And I would ask the people who are doing this, what do you stand to gain? What gains can be got from the world turning on a person that you look to for comfort, protection, provisions? Not is every man a bad man? Is every man not worth anything? Because a lot of times we're quick to throw stones, but we're not ready to walk in the same shoes. Most of the time what you see is happening is that people tend to throw the stones, and they're quick to say how they would have done things differently, but they never put on the same shoes to walk the journey. It upsets me to some degree because, yes, while I've had, issues with my upbringing, there comes a point where you turn the page and you start to create a new format, a new template on what is your life going to be like. Your father, my children, me being a father, I'm going to do things within my children's lives that they may feel are right or wrong. They may have issues and grievances. Not that I don't want to hear those grievances, but at the same time, they now, with those grievances that they have with me, they must now forge a better path from my template that I've given them and say, well, here's the things you've done wrong, and here's the things I'm going to do different. Now, this let's separate this from, maybe abuse or anything else that's more in the violent nature. When those things are not on the table, and you see the same thing with 50 Cent and his son. um when do we what's the outcome? What can you gain from tearing down a man or a woman on social media? Your parents. I'm just going to, in both of these cases, both men have provided for their sons. The issue always becomes in how much, how little, these gray areas, or these object or subjective areas over how much is enough. um why not more? Why not less of this? Why not more of that? And are we missing the fact that they were given opportunities to succeed. They've been given chances that most of us haven't. And are they even looking at the example that they set for the people who are watching them? Because again, if they're going to have children one day, what are they going to do better? And again, are our parents always our excuses for our failures? Are our parents always the reason why we don't become better ourselves? Is it always mom and dad's fault? And the problem I always see is that people live in trauma-based lives. A short story about what happened one day was, dealing with my kids and reprimanding them, with something that was not there. And my mom went to say something to me one time, and it was, oh, don't do this or don't say that. And I told her, I said, these are my kids. Like, I'm going to refer to them. I'm not referring to them in a curse word, but if I call my son boy, he's my boy, and that's my authority to be able to call him boy because he's 6 years old. He's a boy and he's my son. He's a boy. He's my boy. And again, are we looking at, and again, that goes with there's a generational gap because my parents did come from a time where, racism was in a different place and boy was a pejorative term where you refer to a person of color, especially a grown man, to put them down and say they're not a man, they're a boy. But, my son's a 6-year-old boy. So, the pronouns correct in its use of sentence. And I wasn't adhering to the trauma of her upbringing, and the 60s and what she went through. I'm referring to him boy as in my boy. But again, parents are people too. They're also they were who they were before they were a parent. They have their flaws, they have their greatness, their great things about them. They have the things that they either learned it better or took in the worst traits of where they learned it from their parents. So I just ask because the way the world goes is like you're quick to turn on the people who are in your corner, who are there for you. And we expect our parents to be, giving at every stop. They're supposed to just give us. And it's still a childlike mentality where we don't understand that our parents are limited. When we become adults, we're supposed to surpass them. You're supposed to look at your parents for count where they always will have the greater advantage to you is their experience in life, the wisdom that they provide because they're older. And that doesn't mean that that's absolute. It just means that they can give you a perspective from someone who's been around on the planet longer. But that doesn't mean they can always tell you when the weather's going to change. You understand what I'm saying here? Is that your parents are no different than having a council member on your in a king or queen's court, where you have people who advise you and you take their counsel in consideration to become a better king or queen, for the lack of better terms. Because kings have always had the most power, queens have had powers, but they've also had people that can counsel them in times where they had to make big decisions. And your parents exist in that same modality where their experience through their age allows you foresight for what you have to go through when you get older. And that's the greatest advantage that your parents have. But again, in your 40s, are you looking for financial assistance from your parents? And that doesn't mean that your parents can't help you, but is it a demand that you have for them? And if you don't get it, does your perception of them now change? Is it now they're nothing because they didn't give me? And again, I'm asking the question of, are we always making our parents, we always look outward before we look inward to see why we are failing in life? Okay, now, is it the school system's fault? Is it this person made me feel a certain way? And again, I'm just asking is that, okay, so you put it on social media. What happens now? Okay, so the whole world turns on your father, and then what's later? Because in 20 years, you're going to be a lot older. You're going to look back and regret those decisions. And why does the world need to know something about your parents that you specifically feel? What is it? What is this magnification on you as a person that you feel that you can't go to this person man to man, father to son, and have that issue between you two, and just if it doesn't work, then you just don't speak. And again, what comfort do you get in that? What is that? And I always want to know, because I just don't understand it. It's like, okay, well, what do you feel after that? Is that some sort of gratification that you tore down your father? So then you're technically no better. And again, I always had this one. Is like, you know, you feel like someone's a monster. So what do? You tend to persecute them, become a monster yourself.
You are the monster slayer. We men are the monsters now.
You become the thing you're fighting. You can't just be a victim all the time if you're going to go out and pretty much crucify someone else, for lack of better terms.
Leaving humankind with nothing but weeping martyrs, fear, and shame.
And again, what how are you better than them? What are you doing to be better than them? What are you doing that you can say that you're so much better than they are, that allows you to be able to throw throw the stone there towards them, to that glass house, and say, hey, um I'm the one that's better than you, and you're a horrible man, you're horrible this. And have you, as a son or a daughter, ever sat down to even understand where your parents came from, their story of who they were? Have you taken the time out to learn their struggle? Have you taken the time out to learn what made them who they are? If you've never sat down and you always looked at mom and dad as the gimme, 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 you failed to look at them as a person first. Did you realize, like, you're a parent now, if you are a parent, or if you're not a parent, that you're going to be a person one day, but all the things about you that another person may or may not like, your kids are going to see that within you. And did you fail to see that with your actual parents? Did you ever look at your father as a person before he was your dad? Did you ever look at your mom as a woman, or a girl that became a woman, that she had personality traits, just like there was a girl that you did or did not like, or you broke up with, that you didn't like things about her? That girl's going to go on and be a mom one day. And those personality traits that were incompatible with yours, those are going to affect the children that she's going to raise one day. And that's going to have a significant bearing on the way the children look at her. But again, is she not a person first? Is she not a woman who has goods and bads about her? Are you not a man that has goods and bads? I mean, I would ask this, is Romeo perfect himself? Has he not done things or wronged other women or other people in his lives? Has he not made a friend upset? Has he not done anything to betray the trust of someone who cares about him? And is he not a monster himself to someone who views him as such? And this is not to put him down at all, but it's, again, we're always a monster to someone in our lives. No one is an angel to everyone. Even angels are feared by, demons. If you're going to go in the kind of a biblical text, they're a monster to demons because they are the ones that can fight them or overcome them. So there's always a monster to another monster, is what I'm saying. And again, they now have the burden of growing up and proving that they are better than the men that they say are monsters, or the men they accuse. But again, if they don't do that, then what do they stand on? Are they going to stand on victimhood? Is that where they're going to stand on, victimhood, at that point? So again, are we looking at our parents as people first? Do we even try to understand what makes our parents tick? What makes our parents who they are? With their journey that they had to take, to where they got to that point. And again, I'm just wondering, like, what is the end goal? What do you accomplish by that? So all the people who are listening now, when you think to go and type on a computer and say, oh, I'm going to air out my emotions, excuse me, is that going to be something that you look and you could stand on 5 to 10 years later? There are things that I've done in my 20s that I'm like, man, those are pretty bad decisions. But at the time when I was 20, I felt righteous and indignation that I was doing the right thing and I could stand on that square and hold that line. But as time went on, as a decade or two went on, I look back at those decisions and say, man, I was young and I was dumb, or man, I was not, I was just wet behind the ears and I was just being stupid in my youth. And again, now those decisions don't hold up the same way they do now that I'm in my 40s, now that I have children. Now that I have children, now I'm married, I'm now faced with the same pressures. My father used to talk to me about these pressures in life. He used to say, son, well, you're going to hit that. You're going to get those pressures hitting you in life. And when that pressure hits, you're going to find out what who you really are.
Being a black man in America isn't easy. The hunt is on. And you're the prey.
You're going to find out if you have what it takes or you don't have what it takes. And those things are going to come into play at that time. So again, when I got to the point of being in a marriage, got to the point of having children, now I'm feeling the pressures of you have children, the economy, the market. And again, what do I do now that the pressure is hitting? And now I have to look back. Am I making different choices? Whether people find their solace in the end of a bottle, or an edible gummy, or they're finding ways to escape out of their reality. Can you still throw a stone at the parent who took that reality head on? And again, you're judging them, but what's your example? I've got people around me who, they criticize my kind of, strict adherence in the education I have with my kids. And when they were younger, we really didn't want a whole lot of toys, like action figures and stuff. We wanted things like books, abacus, things that can enhance their learning. And people used to say, oh, that's not going to be any fun for them. And I was like, well, how would they know what fun is if, you know what I mean? Like, if they have never seen that before, why are you saying it's not fun reading a book? And that's because you don't read. And again, if you let those influences penetrate you, they become now the process which you deliver those items in your life. You get what I mean? So if we bought into that philosophy, then we would say, oh, toys would only be this. And then my kids enjoy reading books. They'll read books on their own. And again, reading's supposed to be fundamental, but it's not fundamentally something that people do all the time. Even reading and the way of listening is not something people still do. So again, I would ask people is that, one, you got to ask yourself, what do you stand to gain by putting this stuff on social media? What do you stand to gain by cutting off potential business deals that your father would have? What do you stand to gain by him leaving something behind or helping himself if he is broke or is in dire straits? Then you potentially cut off a deal that could take him out of that. Because again, what you say, the world looks at under a magnifying lens. Your intentions to slight your father or get the world or get your father's attention may not be how the world interprets that. For what you try to do to your father, acting like a child or acting in the form of a child, being your father's son or daughter, the world will take and burn him with that. They'll cut off deals. They'll cut off pathways. They'll cut off revenues. He'll have anything that could be possible now is impossible because of that. And again, did you cut off your own future, the way your outcome in the future because of what you said today? And again, I ask that because, again, when the man is gone, there's no more I'm sorry's. When the man is gone, you can't get back those moments. I got people in my families like that. You can try to bury the hatchet, you can try to do things, and they still have something to criticize about, no matter what you do. And I tell my wife this all the time. When you remove yourself from the person, if they still have complaints, then the problem is them. It's not you. All you were was a focal point for something that they find wrong. And again, then what's your example? Are you doing any better? Do your children, Are they advanced since you have all the answers? Are you showing the results from that are an example from the righteousness that you exude? Because if you're so much better and I'm the monster, then why isn't your example reflecting what you say is you're doing better? And I have to ask that people all the time. Make sure that you challenge them back. I had a one of my neighbors here. He's Eastern Indian, and he lives in an apartment, and he's talking about like buying a home. And we know how the market is and how tumultuous it is and how expensive and interest rates. And he would say, well, my friend got this house, and and I would ask him, well, how much did he put down? He's like, I don't know. And he's like, but they're telling me to buy. And I was like, okay, but did he tell you, what his monthly mortgage is? Did he tell you how much extra cash he has a month? Or is it just buy a house and then that's it? It's just buy a house. But they don't ask you, what about your bills? No one goes into your finances. They just give you advice, buy a house. And, they don't know if you're about to lose your job next month. And his peer group is, pressuring him to buy a home. And I'm like, has anybody sat down when they're giving you this advice? Listen to this, to understand your situation, where you are, to be able to give you advice that is in line with your lifestyle. Do people give you advice in line with your lifestyle? And again, if you don't take the time to understand the journey of what your parents went through, I don't want to hear all of that. Well, then again, the ignorance is what steps forward. Yeah, you could look at decisions that he would have made, but again, did he come from an area where he had the same advantage as you? And I think if anyone looks at Mr. Miller, Master P's story, he did not start off where Romeo started off at. If you look at if you put them at the same points at the same age of starting off on their journey, Romeo started way further down the line with more benefit, a well-known name, well-known establishment. His name, he had every advantage at a younger age because of who his father was. Now, you could look at things were mismanaged along the way. We can always make that criticism. And if that's Romeo's complaint, I think he's completely justified. But again, when you take to the world stage and you turn an eye to people in your family, so does the world. And here's the thing. We all have family fights, family squabbles, but the family tends to get over it. You got people out there that are looking for opportunities to hurt and burn your parents or burn the people that you love, the person you're trying to ostracize. They're going to take and look at them as a way to crush them and defeat them in life, because you never know who your father's enemies are. And what you're doing is giving them a golden opportunity to use you as a tool for bringing him down. Your weakness has led to an opportunity where there may have not been any, where they did not see an opening. You've now opened a weakness where you can be used. What you said can be used because, again, it's your own son. Everybody's going to always look at it. Your own family said that about you. Your own dad said this about you. And it does work in reverse for parents too as well, who might be jealous of their children's success. What you say, the world will not understand you didn't mean it. The world will not understand the level of damage that you can do to a person in your own families, the way the reputation is. If you did that to someone and they had a job, they could lose a job just because of that. And again, is social media the place to do that? Do you need an army to fight a fight for you? Do you need the world to view your father as a monster? Do you need the world to view your mother as a monster in order for them to be a monster? Why does the world's opinion of them matter at that point? It's your personal pain. He's not our father. You're not our son. And again, where is the man in this that goes and sits down and has a conversation? And if one can't be had, then you should just walk away. Again, it's when do you sit down to discuss and talk? When do you sit down to listen? When can understanding be had when all you want to do is persecute and accuse? You get out there to throw it out there, and what happens? Now, I don't air out any of my family grievances up here. There's opportunities where I've opened up that people didn't take advantage of, but that happens in business, happens in everything. I don't take advantage of opportunities sometimes when they're passed in front of me. But again, the point of all of this is that what's the outcome? What's your goal? And did you take any time to really understand where your father came from? Did you go to his neighborhood and see what the life was like? Did you put yourself in the shoes of seeing, okay, how would I have come up with this? Sit down and go through the stages of his life and figure out if you had, how would you do the answers if you didn't know the path that he was going to take? Before there was no social media when he came out, you had to sell his record tapes out of his trunk. Now you can go on social media and blast anybody. You can go blast to Japan. How would you do it if you didn't have that? What would you have done? And again, would you have had the hustler spirit? I tell my kids all the time, you don't hustle, you don't eat. Meaning that if you don't actually do the work, you don't work hard to learn to become better at math, you're not going to be a proficient mathematician or a person that can do math very well. If you don't practice reading, you're not going to be a proficient reader. You're going to lack when the test comes. You're not going to understand the question because you do have to read when you're doing a word problem in math. So reading still will come back to haunt you if you don't do it well when the math problems come, because you don't understand the math problem nor the order of operation which you have to solve that problem. So again, what are we accomplishing with that? And secondly, are we always the victim? You're a grown person. You now you got to live your life. How long are you going to blame your parents for what are now your feelings as an adult? I get it. You weren't prepared. We all walk out at 21, 22, not prepared. But again, does college teach you everything to be prepared for in life? No, they give you a degree and send you on your way. They don't promise you a job. They don't promise you a thriving career. They don't promise you that automation won't come and take your career away from you and make your degree obsolete. They don't promise you that the pay is guaranteed in a degree that or a profession that may have a high pay when you start out in your career. They don't promise that your days will be easy, that you won't get sick or hurt. But we still go to college to get that all piece of paper that says that we know something. And we also get the debt that is associated with it. You play a sport. The sport doesn't promise that it's going to give you greatness. Many a great athlete has been one injury away from a season or career-ending injury. But again, they still go to play it. But again, is the sport the monster? And again, your parents are just people. They're not gods. They're not. They didn't just create everything. They're people who had issues too. Your parents could have been good or bad people, great or small people. But again, there were people first. They were a kid who was shy, arrogant, cocky, mean, nice, timid, aggressive, passive. All those qualities could have been any one of your parents. Some parents had to struggle. Some parents didn't have a struggle. Some girls were the prettiest girls, and some girls, everybody passed over because she couldn't compete with the other girls' looks. Some girls, wish they had the figure of another girl. So that way, that one guy that notices that one girl that's smaller than her, that guy would notice her. There's always a person that you dreamed of getting that you couldn't get because another person had the look or the shape or the body type that you like, that they like, that you wish you had. And again, these people become parents and they have their feelings too. But again, as we as children, do we look at our parents like we're that much better than them? And I think that's the mindset or adjustment that we have to see, that our parents, they're just people too as well. They deserve our understanding. Forgiveness, that's going to be kind of dependent on every child themselves. But again, the least we could do is try to understand their journey and then make a value judgment when we really sat down and said, man, would I do any better? And if you could do any better, then your life should be better because you did not have the same life as them. You didn't have to start in the same place. If you got a head start, I tell my kids all the time, I'm giving you a head start in life. You better take advantage of it. Do not blame me once you leave the house, because I'm giving you every advantage. I'm giving you the better schools. I'm giving you a business and things to model. I'm teaching you skills. I'm getting you tutors. I'm giving you violin practices. I'm giving you everything that gives you an advantage from where your other peers will be in the globe. And if you're a parent that's doing that, you got to really talk to your kids when they're younger to let them know that what advantages they're being given. I don't agree that you should make your kids suffer in the same way that you have in challenges. They need to have challenges to growth. They're going to have challenges. all in their life. I don't think that's it. I don't think that, I can't stand sometimes in my culture. It's like, you're not being a man because you got to ask for help. Man, that's the worst mindset to have. Part of the things in my culture that I don't like is that, we only respect people who get it out of the mud, not people who had it given to them. In other cultures, that's a tactical advantage for generating future wealth, where it's like, oh, your kids got to suffer. But other cultures, they help their kids. That's not something that is looked at as like you're not worthy if you didn't go through the same struggle or you need to suffer. It might make us more resilient as a race or a culture, but it doesn't always yield successful results. When I tell my kids that, hey, I'm giving you a head start, is that they can no longer blame me for failings when they're an adult if I've set them up to be successful when they were a child, meaning that I've given them the better schools to go to. I've sat down and spent time with them in their education. I've given them music lessons. I give them tutors. I've given them all the advantages to be more successful. And with that, they've not taken advantage of opportunities that are presented to them. They've not taken on challenges when they're presented to them. They find the easy way out. So I challenge them all the time to overcome and try to do things and analyze things. I even tell my wife, don't give them the answers. Let them spend time failing and trying to solve, because this is what they need to start accessing. They need to start learning how to use this in their brain. They need to have tasks around the house that allows them some autonomy and the responsibility to develop themselves when they get into adulthood. So again, they are set up to be, sweep, vacuum, do laundry. They're 8 and 6 years old. My daughter will take the clothes out of the laundry, out of the washing machine. My son will put them in the dryer. My daughter will start the laundry. And we always check, hey, did you do this? You put the fabric softener sheet in there, things like that. These little small micro roles will help build their confidence up. And it also teaches them how to maintain a home. They have to clean on Saturdays, that responsibility. So later on in life, they should have some level of basic knowledge on how to operate a life. What they need now is experience. And that's where later on my guidance comes in again. What I've talked about earlier is that now I have the experience of being a parent. My father always says, I've been a man a lot longer than you have been. And what he tells me by saying that is I listen to his experience of being a man. Because my father, I've been a man for 20 years? My father's been a man for 40 years. So who's got more experience? He's got more experience of being a parent. He's got more experience of being a husband. He's got more experience of being a father. Because I don't know how to teach knowledge to a 40-year-old son. My son's 6, but he does because his son is 40. Me, So again, there's much that he can teach me now about these exchanges we have. But again, you got to be willing to listen as a son. And even though I disagree with my father sometimes, I still listen, because there's a lesson can be learned in something that you disagree with at the time that you may agree with in the future. Pay attention. I just said something that you should pay attention to. There is a lesson that can be learned by something you disagree with now, Mr. Miller, that you may agree with later on in life when your father's gone or your father's older, or you are now in the role that you judged the actions of the previous king weren't right. And now you're now the one that has to make decisions. And again, can you do them better? Or do we have a life that just lacks? So something to think about, folks. I wanted just to hit you all with that because this is pressing on my mind. I'm trying not to get too involved in the celebrity things, but I can see this happening all over, where people stop looking to their parents and looking at what the steps they've taken, the journey they've walked, and instead they come with castigation and judgment, and they feel that they can do better, but they haven't done better. The only thing they've done is they've itemized the things that make them better than their parents in their own mind. But again, do you have foot and action to show your results? Now, I'm not saying this moment to brag, but it's like, okay, but in my immediate family, my brother and I didn't skip. He's a teacher and I'm a nurse. I didn't skip a grade. Man, I had times struggling. My father actually failed a grade, and he was a teacher. I mean, he failed, I think, in ninth grade or something like that. I think he failed once or twice. But for a guy that held back, as a son, I never failed a grade. Failed a grade and had to be retained in a grade. That's what my dad. He had to be retained into a grade. And I don't say that to denigrate my dad, but it's just that was his journey. So my son, I didn't fail any grades. Went progressed to every grade as I passed through. Um, when I did get some failing marks, my dad did correct. That my study, we went back to kind of to the basics to figure out where I was breaking down and getting some things wrong, but I passed every grade. And now, from a father who was retained or held back, I passed every grade to now my both son and daughter skipped a grade. So there's a progression. I can stand on that, but I got results to show it. So again, if you don't have results, you should close your mouth. Because when you have results, what you should do is stand on your results and say, that's why I'm better. Not just tell people how someone else is a monster because they didn't do well. And again, I know that the subject that they're talking about is something sensitive as losing a child. But again, did he have it? No one's experienced in losing a child unless you've lost a child. How you handle that, the process of dealing with that, no one knows how a father or mother can respond to that but those parents. And I'm sure the journey to that was not just a one and done. This wasn't like, somebody just blew something in someone's face and then they died. This was something that was probably over a long period of time that no one knows how long they had to deal with it. Only the parents would know the journey of having to deal with that until it came to the unfaithful climax. But again, are you blaming someone who could have done more, that did all they could, and they couldn't save the person from themselves? As a parent, you can only do so much to tell your kids. Even as a young kid, you can only tell your kids so much to say, don't do this, don't do that, and they'll still do it. They'll still go over there and do it again. You can tell them, hey, this is that, and they'll still come over and do it. Even as a child, you can only tell your children so much until they get it. They can listen to you blue in the face. I tell my daughter stuff all the time, and it's like, just she'll end up the next day doing the same thing over, and I'm like, girl, what are you doing here? Please throw me a bone here. And again, they're people. They have their own minds. They have their own flaws that they're going to make decisions, and it can be costly. And as a parent, what can you do when you see your child going down a path that you don't want them to go down, but they're convicted on going down that path? I mean, outside of actually like restraining them or doing something to, physically tear them away or locking them up someplace like that, what can you do? What could be done? And we always look back and say we could have done more, but again, what would you have done in that situation? Would you have been even half of what he had been in that situation? We don't know. And again, all I'm saying is that, was there a point of understanding, or was blame coming first? Was blame coming before there was understanding? Something to think about, folks. Something to think about when you dealing with your parents and you're annoyed at them this time, or you're upset at them, or you have a disagreement with them. Do you ever look at them and just see they're regular people just like you? That just like you have things your spouse may not like about you, your girlfriend may not like about you, your brother, sister may not like about you. Do you realize that as a parent, your kids may look at you that way and not like those things about you? You're just a person. You're not, a parent doesn't make you special. It just makes you special to that child. But again, you're still a parent. You were a person before you were a parent. You weren't born a parent. You become a parent. And it's something that we all need to take a step back and reevaluate. And as parents, do we ever tell our story to our children? Because don't forget, our children, they don't know who we really are. They just figure out the good and bad things about your personality that gels with them or doesn't. But they still, do we ever tell them our story? Where we've been, the tales of our journey? And again, do our children ever ask us where we are, who we are, and where we came from? And I think once you kind of realize that and take a step back, you stop calling your parents monsters and you'll start calling them mom and dad again. I don't know, folks. Maybe I could be wrong. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Ancestry Lands. Land ownership, we talk about it all the time. It's something you can pass down. There are people who have failed businesses. There are people who have money. Money goes, stocks go, just there's stocks that don't exist anymore because the companies, have gone under the ground. Land is something that will last generations. Land that we live on has been, where I live in Pennsylvania, definitely the colonial wars fought on the places I stand on now. Heck, Valley Forge, where Washington, fought over, I've actually visited. The same areas where Revolutionary Wars they fought the British at. I've stood on the same ground where hundreds of years ago these wars were fought. Land stays and test the time, folks. We're offering you an opportunity. Land ownership, no interest, no credit checks. Think about generations from now and you having a property that can last for generations. Something to think about. But again, we got to bridge the gap between father and son, mother and daughter, father and daughter, and mother and son. We got to start healing and stop blaming and have more understanding, folks. Phil Davis, Ancestry Lands. Thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate you so much. Like, share, subscribe. Go to ancestry.com to buy some properties. Build your wealth today, folks. Build generational wealth, something that you can pass down to your grandchildren. Once you give it to them, the story of you is never dead. Ancestry Lands, folks. Phil Davis, I'm signing out. Peace.
Goodbye.